This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
Many times the finale feels a little bittersweet. We all shake hands, say our goodbyes, and make our way into the off-season to recuperate. But here in Brazil, the atmosphere traditionally is not a somber one, and instead has the feelings of a great party. I say this is a far more appropriate way to close things out, with a bang. Drivers and fans alike get to enjoy the thrills of racing one last time as we get ready to watch the Majors Brazilian Grand Prix, and you'll see it all live here on the Global Sim Racing channel and the iRacing Esports Network. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth tonight is Adam Lindgren. Next to him is our very own Blackstripe pro-level driver, Christian Challoner. Behind the scenes is our director, the Dr. Amjad Yaman, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beer. Brazil has made motorsports a big part of its rich heritage. Nowhere is that more apparent than at the home of the Brazilian Grand Prix for nearly 30 years now. To find out more about Interlagos, let's take a closer look at the track. Welcome to Autódromo's José Carlos Pache. Most fans and drivers simply know this place as Interlagos. Starting life as an absolute behemoth of a circuit, this Brazilian track was eventually truncated to the version you see today. Having hosted Formula One for roughly 3 decades, it's become very well known on the international stage. But it has also held rounds in the World Endurance Championship, as well as frequently seen Brazilian stock cars, motorcycles, and even truck racing. There's little difference between its two layouts, which includes the GP course and the Moto course, which simply adds a chicane to the end of the lap. In both cases, it's a tale of two circuits. The run past the start-finish line and into the Senna S, followed by the blast towards the Descida do Lago, are very high-speed sections that come back-to-back. Drivers will need to focus on top end in order to attack or defend. Expect most passes to happen in those two corners. But from Ferradura until Juchão, the track suddenly twists itself into a mess of hairpins and frustratingly technical turns. This can make car setup a real compromise, and for the latter part of the lap, an absolute pain when dealing with traffic. Pit exit is also a narrow affair, so it requires drivers to take care when trying to maximize their outlaps. On the upside, with this being a modern F1 track, there's paved runoff in abundance at many of the fast corners. The passion of the Brazilian fans always comes out in force at races, and it's no wonder with this picturesque track sandwiched right amongst the neighborhoods of Sao Paulo.
As you can see there, quite an interesting track, quite an old school circuit, and tonight we're going to be doing 71 laps around here, 15 turns, and just over 4 kilometers in length. Quite a unique combination of corners here, and quite a challenge for this car actually. There's a lot of high-speed corners, and then there's also quite a few infield section corners which are quite tight and slow, and it's really difficult to get this car around here. Quite a lot of areas where you can make easy mistakes, especially on the exit. We've got Juchão at the end there, really difficult corner and really important for the lap as well. And now we've had a look at that, I'll hand over to Adam, who's got the championship points.
Yeah, definitely. Now, taking a look at the pro standings, Matthew Thunhorst has sewn up the pro championship title, but the 2 other podium positions are still up for grabs. Now, Liam Quinn raced in the Euro region this morning, finishing only 23rd, which means he will not overtake Trevor Clement for second in points. To hold on the bronze, Liam will have to hope that Travis Warling, our pole sitter tonight, has a bad night and doesn't place higher than 18th. Eric Smith, it appears, did not qualify and will lose 5th to Lionel Callisto, who is just off our board. So those podium positions still up for grabs here. Now, as far as the team championship is concerned, congrats to Alliance for taking a victory for the 4th year in a row. It's a really impressive run for them, and as they continue their dominance. And in the Sportsman Series, it looks like all of these Sportsman drivers, this is where things get really exciting. Kyle Murphy only has a 65-point lead over Samuel Scott, with Ernie Lundvig only 135 points back, and Mark Redeker 183 points back. Now take a look at Nick Kuhn. Nick Kuhn is the only driver on this board who qualified for the pro split. So that means that even though he's 199 points back, he possibly could win this championship tonight if he scores very well or possibly wins this race. But it's going to be a hard thing to do for him. Now, as far as the legends go, Brian Bennett has sewn up the gold here, but the remainder of the podium is still up for grabs in this as well. And with all 5 drivers you see here in the pro split tonight, the last 2 steps on the podium are still up for grabs. So we'll see who grabs it tonight, Joe.
I love seeing all the different championships that they're able to fight for. Keeps everybody interested throughout the field. Now, of course, we are once again watching this on the iRacing Esports Network. Make sure and subscribe when you get the opportunity. All you got to do that is click on the big red button that says subscribe. And then you'll see all the awesome races here on the IESN show up into your YouTube feed. Today's race itself, though, as we mentioned before, this is the finale. And this is a lap-limited race that we are watching here today. Of course, 71 laps that they will be running out there. This is the Williams FW31. This is the F1 car from the Williams team that competed in the 2009 F1 season. They have a 35 incident limit that they have out there on track. And, well, this is a modern F1 course. There's lots of paved runoff. You can run over that pretty easily. They do have a spare car if you get some sort of damage. That'll be easy to do. We were talking a little before we came live, and apparently these cars are very difficult to try and work their way around the circuit. Now, if you'd like to help support the Global Sim Racing channel, we have a merchandise store now. If you want to check out our gear, you can see the link below in the description. One of the new things we've just added today is a polo shirt. There you see it right there. Now, these are very cool polo shirts. These are nice and fancy for the golf course, so they give you automatic back massages and provide you with mint juleps. So make sure and grab one of those, and you can enjoy your time either on the golf course or wherever you might feel the need to dress up just a little bit, not a whole lot, enough to wear a polo out there. Looking at the drivers warming up currently, we see that Warling is looking very good. And we were talking about the difficulty of driving these cars. Christian, you got to hop out there a little bit earlier in the European region race for this series. So you have a firsthand experience of just what it's like trying to get these things to go.
Yeah, I mean, this is a car where it really rewards sort of the specialists of it, and high downforce, really. I've got to be honest and say I didn't particularly enjoy it myself. It's pretty much the exact opposite end of the spectrum of things that I enjoy, because it's very unpredictable. You'll have moments where you'll be able to be really aggressive on the throttle, and it'll really hook up and grip, and then you'll also have moments where the exact opposite will happen. You'll think you're going to be okay, and you'll just instantly loop the car. So it's definitely one where the more experience you've got with it, the better you're going to be. And I think we can kind of see that. And we saw it in Europe with some of the specialists coming out as well.
Undoubtedly, the European split probably pretty competitive. Now, we have a special announcement. If you've been waiting to find out what next season is going to be like for the majors, drum roll please. This is what we've got in store for you. There you can see, going to open up with that Daytona 2.4, double for Daytona, as this almost pretty much become tradition here in this series, the Daytona 500 after that. Some big changes, though. You can see they're going to Rockingham with the NASCAR cars as well right after that. That is to mimic the last time the Cup cars visited there. They've also got the WTCR cars, the new Audi that has just been introduced, and they are going to the Netherlands for that one. That'll be the first time they've been to Zandvoort here in this series. World 600 comes back, and some regulars such as the 500 in Le Mans. Now they're going to Road America for the first time as well. Amazingly, they haven't visited that one before. They bring Knoxville back for the dirt stuff. They have the Belgian Grand Prix with this car that we're racing right here. Interestingly, you can see the Silver Crown is coming back for its second time ever. That was actually pretty popular, surprisingly popular. And here's one that I personally am very happy about. The 1968 United States Grand Prix is in the Lotus 49. So I'm extremely excited to get to call that one. And of course, Bathurst tradition, and they close it up with California. That'll be a lot of fun. We were all just talking now that we saw that before we went live about how excited we are for that schedule. Right now, Adam, looking down the order, and one thing that surprises me is, speaking of drivers with experience in open wheel cars, Richie Hearn returns once again, our very own commentator here on the channel, who ran real Indy cars, but he seems to not be doing so hot in the warm-up here. I kind of expected him to be a little bit higher up.
Yeah, Richie seems to be struggling a little bit, but he hasn't taken that many laps, so he's right now decided to go back to the garage and take a refresher before the race starts. But I'd expect him, I mean, I expect him to do a little bit better once the race gets started. But as Christian was talking about, these cars could be extremely difficult and challenging, especially because you have a lot of long sweeping corners that come out of sharp braking zones, and those build up the downforce as you go. And if you commit to them, you can gain a bunch of time, but at the same time, if you commit to them too early and you spin those rear tires, it's really difficult to save this car and to keep any sort of pace. And we're seeing a lot of drivers struggle with that as we look at practice today.
Certainly seems like it. And you know, Christian, usually when we talk about setups, it's some of the oval races, because the teams can be very protective of those. I'm sure you know from the Peak Series driving over there. But what about here for the Williams cars? Were you and your Connect teammates pretty tight-lipped about how you set this car up? Was it that way pretty generally in the league here?
I wasn't particularly secretive about what I was doing, but if I'm honest, I didn't really know what I was doing. Now, I think some of the other guys in here, I know it was mentioned to me that some guys were running on past DWC setups, and I can only assume that a couple of people were pretty much on derivatives of that. So there is some trickle-down effect from that. I mean, I think we saw Scott Newton in the international region. He's a member of Apex Racing, so I'm sure there was something there from a past F1 season. And there's definitely big changes you can make to the car in terms of setup. It's an interesting garage pace to look at, really, and it's one of those cars where everything has to be just so, otherwise it'll be horrible. And I think the guys who really spend the time and kind of get exactly where they need to be are the ones who'll find the car the most rewarding, both to drive and to set up.
Jake Reynolds, another one of those peak antifreeze drivers, currently rocking the number 1, but this will be the last time for a bit. The former champion is now on his way out, as it's been handed over to Thunhorst for a season. There's our new champion, who's going to be able to take over that number 1 on his Alliance car, of course, bring it back over to that side of the teams as they work their way through some of the more technical sections of this track. Which brings me to the question, Adam, I mean, where are you expecting passes to happen? Do you think this is going to be a lot like what we tended to see in real life in F1, just kind of 2 spots out there?
Yeah, if you take a big risk, you can pass in the middle sector, but it's really the first and the last sectors where you're going to see a lot of the passing, and most of that's going to be due to the drafts that you get down the 2 long straights. But there is a chance to pass in the middle sector. There are a couple chances if you decide to outbrake people if you're close enough behind them, but that requires you to get a better exit than them, and that can be extremely risky in these cars, as we talked about with how eager they are to spin those rear tires. So I expect that we'll see most of the passing happening in the safe spots down the straights, but maybe some of the more aggressive guys who are used to this car will be diving it down in that middle sector.
And of course, there's no DRS, because again, this is the 2009 car. That did not exist yet. So watch Nick Kuhn there for the Dog Bear Racing team weave his way around as well. So there's no help that you can get from the flap on the rear wing to try and pick up that extra speed. You got to do it the old-fashioned way, and you have no KERS on this car. It was briefly on this car, from what I understand, but they did not add it here in this version here on iRacing. Just about 30 seconds left, and then we'll get our grid, and we'll get just a little less than 2 hours of racing here. 71 laps around this classic and very popular track here in Formula One. See Callisto, another former champion, currently sitting second in the warm-up. Seems to do very, very well in this car. Never ceases to amaze me how some of these drivers can go from one style of racing to another in this series and continue to be competitive, considering, as was mentioned by Christian, how much of a specialist car many of these are that they've been running in throughout the season. Warm-up now officially over. The checkered flag is out. We are about to start this last round of the season. So if you've been having fun, make sure and buckle up because we've got just a little bit more time left for that. The grid is set, and it starts as thus. Travis Warling will be on the pole with Steve Driscoll in second. Blake Reynolds starts P3. Mark Torres starts in the 4th position. Then in row 3, it is Kevin Hill in 5th and John Pat Kelly in P6. Trevor Clement starts in 7th with Brian McGreevy in 8th and Wade Hayes in 9th. Top 10 is rounded out by Ross Banfield. Adam?
Matthew Thunhorse is going to start P11 alongside Lionel Callisto. Lucky Baker's dozen position goes to Paul Darling in 13th alongside Scott Corbin. Then we have Reed Miller and Jeff Schmeier on row 8 and Marcus Tracy and Brian Barnes rounding out the top 18 with William Fletcher and Ray Partridge going down to 20th. Christian?
Then we got Richie Hearn starting 21st, talked about him a little bit in the pre-race. Nick Kuhn and Brian Bennett behind him. Brian Bennett a little bit further back than normal. Then we got Ryan Toma, Rob Gold, Bob Beltrami, and Wayne Hutchinson right at the back.
See them all lining up for the traditional F1 standing start up at the front. What is Travis Warling going to do? Just waiting on a couple, and they're out there now, and the green flag is already out as Travis Warling is good off the line, but not so for some of the cars in the back. You can see them fanning out to try and avoid the car that was slow off the line. They swing it into the first corner, and already we've got a mess in the mid-pack. We'll try to get to that in a bit. I see Jeff Schmeier off the road and a couple others. I think most were able to slow down in time to not make contact, but it certainly was not good coming into that first corner. Up at the front, Warling leads Driscoll, leads Reynolds for your podium. A little bit of a gap back to Clement, and then it's a big gap back to McGreevy.
Yeah, quite a few people really struggling there on that start. That first corner can really catch you off guard. Quite a few people struggling on the standing start as well as they slowed down there. But look at this. Travis Warling already off to a second lead, but man, it's close up there for the top 5.
Yeah, staying with each other, which is what you want to do right now, Christian.
Yeah, I was just going to say there was a lot of wheel spin from one of the kinetic cars on the start there, and it looked like it caused a bit of a 3 or even a 4 wide going into 1, and everybody kind of got stacked up, and it's really difficult. It's downhill braking zone, and especially at the start, as we see more people having issues out of the slow corners already.
Yep, Paul Darling spun in Sector 2 as well as Jeff Schmeier, who's just getting his car righted as well. So a bunch of people having trouble. Look at this, battle for the lead.
For a second between Driscoll and Reynolds, who's trying to go the long way around to the first corner, inside of the second apex, but Curva de Sol, unfortunately, is going to be the other way, so he starts to fall back behind them. Clement watching with eager eyes, seeing if he can maybe get involved here, and closing under braking, but not close enough to make the attack. Instead, it's Driscoll goes wide off of the Descida del Lago, and now Blake Reynolds gets in front of him, immediately chops him off, as they come into the Ferradura, move Blake Reynolds into P2.
Very commanding pass there. Blake Reynolds doing a great job of sticking in that fight. It's a dangerous place to be, is the inside of 1 when you've got a guy on the outside trying to take that corner and trying to chop down to the apex. But man, Blake stuck with it and made that pass work.
And we've got a car off into what looks like the duck spill there. Trying to figure out who that is. Marcus Tracy, it looks like.
Brian McGreevy actually went spinning into the infield there with in the second sector there, so he's recovered and is back racing in 16th position. We're going to take a look at this.
On his way through Little Pine Tree down towards the ductile. Oh, wow, it came around quick.
Yeah, very, very easy to do that. Just, again, getting on the throttle slightly too soon, and well, not even slightly too soon, just too hard. And there's a lot of corners like that around here, especially in the infield, as we see there's a huge stack up going into 1 right now.
We're going to watch the replay on the start. You can see how many cars were slow off the line. Probably one of the very tricky things about this car. Oh, and there's the pileup. Now, who did you manage to see who was the first to kind of get involved there, Christian?
I believe it all kind of started when Mark Torres got a really bad getaway. He kind of really launched the car off with you see him there. just pulls way across to the right. Obviously not intentionally, just really getting a lot of wheel spin, and it kind of checked everybody up behind. I'm not exactly sure what happened here, where somebody got turned across the racetrack, but yeah, it's just a really difficult start. We see it in real life as well, and we've seen it in numerous races on here. It's just how it goes, and you got to be really careful into one of this track.
There's no special aids that these drivers get. This is exactly what the real drivers, Nico Rosberg and his teammate, drove in the 2009 season. Meanwhile, Reynolds trying to chase down Warling, but has lost about 2.9 seconds up to our leader. Driscoll still getting chase behind him. Clement has definitely dropped off back there and forth. You can see he and his alliance teammate Lionel Callisto rounding out your top 5. Worth pointing out that the drivers that did get damaged have been able to come back out. There is that spare car. So even though we had a lot of drivers unfortunately ruining carbon fiber into the first corner, they just ducked it in, and they're going to be on a bit of a back foot here, Adam, for the remainder of the race.
Yeah, definitely they will be on a back foot. It's you got to be careful around here with the amount of wheel spin that you can get. It's really dangerous to grab that spare car in the first couple laps. We're only on lap 4 of 71 here, so everyone's got to be really careful. As we're taking a look at Richie Hearn battling with Brian McGreevy and Marcus Tracy for that 13th position. These guys back here have been pushing their cars very hard. Everybody almost going wide after that first long straight into the hard braking zone. So looks like these cars are really struggling under the heavy weight of fuel right now, Christian.
Yeah, it's one of those things where there's also some variety in terms of strategy, and the guys especially who are maybe doing this race on a 2-stop, they know they have to push hard because they've got a lot of time to make up, and they need to make a really big dent into those guys doing the 1-stopper who've got the much heavier car, about 30 kilos heavier or so. So they really need to get going, and I think that's kind of what we see up at the front with some of the faster starters and a couple of guys maybe trying to just hold on with the 1-stopper, but it does make the braking zones especially. The car's just a little bit more lazier than it would have been, say, in qualifying for these guys.
Right now we ride on board with Clement. Callisto closing into him down into the Descida del Lago initially, but decided to back out of it. He still stays pretty close to the rear wing of his teammate, just threatening. Obviously didn't want to take a risky move this early on. There's no cautions to help drivers try and catch up if they are set back, like we saw with a number of them a little bit earlier on. Already getting ready to start lap 6 up the front straight, or at least towards the front straight, past the water tower and the Subidos dos boxes. Callisto falls back a little bit. Not going to be able to attack Clement this time into the Senna S.
He's had an amazing start, though. He's up from 12th into 5th, one of the biggest movers, actually, so he probably doesn't really need to be that aggressive right here. He's already gained a lot more than he probably thought he was going to.
He's looking good, and this is where he looked good last time, coming out of the Senna S, out of the Curva de Sol. The Retta Aposta offers an opportunity. This time he's more aggressive. He's to the inside, outbrakes his teammate. I'd say that Clement gave that one up.
Oh, we had a big, huge kerfuffle go on behind them for 7th place. Mark Torres, Ross Banfield, and Reed Miller almost got together coming through that corner there. It was quite difficult for the two of them. For the three of them, actually, because Ross Banfield looked like he had lost time because he was actually battling with Wade Hayes up ahead of him earlier.
Yeah, they went 3 wide into that corner. Miller tried to duck to the inside while the two were distracted. But Banfield and Torres held on to the positions as now they come through Sector 2 out of the Duck's Bill. A little duck to the inside from Miller. Seeing if he could maybe get that elusive pass in the infield section. Not to be this time. Board just to the side of the nose of Reed now. That's Banfield up ahead. This is a fantastic run. He's going to get the slipstream. Is this going to be enough is the question. It's going to stay to the inside. Banfield making sure to go a little bit defensive here later on the brakes from Miller. Working his way around. Can he get the shot off the corner? He's going to try it, and he's just not brave enough to cut in front of Banfield.
It's a difficult spot to pass there. The car gets extremely twitchy when you're trying to go around that corner. It can really come out from under if you're not careful. Reed Miller looking to the inside, but thinks better of it. Ross Banfield going to carry a lot of speed there. Quite impressive from him as well. But Reed Miller looks like it might be only a matter of time. I think Ross Banfield might have more fuel on board because he looks a little bit sluggish through on some of the straights and through some of the corners here.
Look now, behind them, there's an Alliance car coming, and it's none other than our new champion, Matthew Thunhorst. He's being chased by Ryan Toma, his fellow Alliance driver as well. So if these two keep messing around, they could find themselves overtaken by who will be getting that #1 next season. Another good exit off of the junction from Reed Miller. Can he make this one stick, though? I think he's a little bit closer this time. Quick defensive move from Banfield, heading all the way down into the pit wall to make sure that he covers off Miller. Miller a little bit later on the brakes. Oh, looking for the over-under. Instead, he gets into the back of him. Both of them off course, and 2 positions with ease for both Toma and Thunhorst.
Massively costly for Banfield as well. I had a feeling looking at his practice times that he's one of our one-stoppers, and you really have to stay out of trouble if you're a one-stopper, because you got to keep those guys on 2 stops behind you and build a gap here, and obviously getting sent around like that is really kind of putting an end to that happening.
It certainly looks like he was trying for the over-under, but didn't work out. And something's happened to Richie Hearn. He's falling down our timing and scoring tower. This happened out of the Descida del Lago as he was being overtaken by the Popsicle Man. Ryan Barnes slipping through the inside, wheel spin, turns him around, and the Elite West driver, unfortunately, has to get it going carefully to not run into traffic.
Yeah, Richie was part of a big bottleneck that's going on right behind Brian McGreevy in 12th position, as there's a big bunch of cars there. But take a look at this. Mark Torres and Wade Hayes, 2 teammates working together to try and make their way back up to that front pack.
They've made their way into 6th position. Hayes in 7th. He's going to follow him out of the Descida del Lago, out of the Curva del Sol, but not close enough to try and attack his teammate into the Descida del Lago. Continuing to plunge downhill into one of the lower portions of the circuit. So far, we are still waiting on our first scheduled stop from any of the drivers. We're on lap 9 right now. Unlike modern Formula One, these cars don't really have to worry about the tire wear nearly as much. It's all down to fuel. You see our leader, Travis Warling, up past the Subidos dos boxes and across the start-finish line for another time. To start the next lap, he's extended the gap to Reynolds by about 4 seconds.
Yeah, actually, Warling and Reynolds have been swapping fastest laps. Warling puts in the fastest lap right there, but as the fuel starts to burn off, these cars start to get faster and faster. Now, granted, like Joe said, they're going to pick up more fuel when they go into the boxes, but it's going to be one of the most challenging parts of this race is to try and keep your pace up once you pit. So, Christian, how's the tire fall off with these cars? Did they experience anything like that during this race?
No, there's definitely not really any tire fall off, so to speak, but what there is there's obviously the fuel burn, and generally the car gets faster and faster over the course of a run, so it means that you actually have to be very, very careful when you're coming out of the pits, because you've suddenly got a car that's got a lot more fuel on board, that's a lot heavier, a lot lazier than it once was when you pitted, and you do have to be very careful with that. Even the pit exit is dangerous on the first lap out.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about what it's like trying to get this car up to speed through that narrow pit exit, as we now watched Thunhorst and Toma still down in that 8th and 9th position, trying to catch up to Wade Hayes. Reed Miller still behind them. He's been able to get going once again after his incident. Worth noting.
Joe,
go ahead.
That pursuit up to Wade Hayes for Ryan Thomas and Matthew Thunhorst doesn't seem like it's working. Ryan Thomas about 6 seconds behind Wade Hayes at this stage. And I just don't think they have the pace yet, whether they're on different strategies and have different fuel loads, or whether or not Wade's pace is just a little bit faster right now. But it seems like the gap isn't closing as much as they'd like it to right now.
Reynolds, of course, would like another win, with him being on 2 wins. Only one driver in the Americas region has managed more than that, and that is, of course, our champion, Thunhorst. Warling will be able to get to 2 wins if he stays in front today. And then, other than them, I believe Tucker Minter and Alex Saunders, the only other 2 that managed more than a single win this season. It was very spread out.
It just shows the different types of disciplines you have to be good at to be successful in the major series. And that's what makes this series so fascinating, is that the person who wins the championship is the best all-arounder. It doesn't mean that they've won every race, but it means that they're the best at all of the disciplines and had the luck go their way on the days when the race happened. Oh, goodness.
Luck did not go the way of Ray Partridge. He loses multiple positions. Once again, wheel spin seems to be the big culprit for a lot of cars getting turned around today. So watch from on board.
And we've seen a lot of this corner in particular, and it's actually quite nice for them that there's the barrier is a little bit away from the track there. It's one of the few places you can actually make a mistake and not get immediately punished for it in a damage sense.
There you see Scott Corbin was overtaken by Kevin Hill up the front stretch. That moves Hill into 19th. All 27 of our drivers that started are still out there, which begs the question, when do we start seeing lap traffic? Actually, it might be pretty soon, because I see Warling climbing the hill just as Brian Bennett, who is our last car on the track, coming across the line now.
I'd say it's probably a lap away, if that, for Travis Warling catching the back of Brian Bennett. But then he's got another big gap up to Jeff Schmeier ahead of him. So it's going to be a little bit before he starts getting into the thick of it. But once he does, it's going to be interesting to see how these guys respect the blue flags, because not all of these guys are road racer professionals. So some of these guys might not be as familiar with blue flag etiquette as others.
Oh, and the other thing, too, Christian, is that, well, this doesn't operate by F1 rules like they do in the real world. This is by iRacing rules, which the blue flags are not obligatory.
That's exactly right. I think that's something that actually kind of goes a little bit unnoticed when it comes to road racing, is that really the only series in real racing that actually has mandatory blue flags is Formula One, and everywhere else it's advisory, and it's advisory in this series too. I think everybody is pretty good about kind of giving up spots in areas which makes sense for everybody, but it's definitely difficult, and there is definitely significant aero effects with this car when you're following people, and you will lose a lot of time, especially if you catch say a pack of 3 to 5 cars.
Back down in the middle of the pack, I can see Brian Barnes, even though he'd overtaken Richie Hearn, still has Tracy and Darling close behind him. So 3-car battle kind of shaping up as they come out through Mergulo.
Yeah, Darling's lost a couple of positions since the start, but it looks like he's got pace on Marcus Tracy and Brian Barnes. But he just has not been able to get the exits onto the straights that he's been looking for. You see it again here. He is just not close enough to make this dive down into the Senna S's. And considering that these are the two only places where you can really make an aggressive pass, he's not going to be able to get by, and this is just holding him up. And especially if you're on that one-stop strategy, as Christian was saying, this is seriously ruining your race.
Darling got a good run off the Senna S's, though. Is this going to give him a chance to maybe sneak through on Tracy? He's going to think about it. He looks to the inside. Tracy looking like he breaks a little early, and that's going to give Paul Darling P15. Christian, is there a variety of ways that you can go about downforce at a track like this in the F1 car, or is it just crank as much wing in as you can?
To be honest, the whole downforce setup with this car was a little bit of a mystery to me. I found, I mean, there's only a few options. You've got the front wing flap, you've got the overall downforce trim, and then you've got the rear wing wicker. And I personally didn't find that running any wicker was helpful. And that really the biggest thing was the amount of rake you had in the car. And something we've seen in both the European and international races as well is that some guys must have had a lot of rake in their car because they were losing a lot of speed down the straights. And it does make it very, very difficult to pass if you set up like that. And you have this really frustrating scenario where you'll be so much faster than them in the infield, but you'll have no way to pass.
Right now in the infield, Steve Driscoll leads Lionel Callisto, and this is a battle for the final step on the podium. Callisto, I'm sure, would like to end things on a good points haul out here as he continues to try to reel him in. In fact, does look quite strong here through this section, as he had lost just before that about a couple tenths. Now, as he climbs back closer, it comes down to 7/10. It was at 1.3 before we came into the infield.
Yeah, Lionel Callisto has some decent pace, but he's not super consistent right now, whereas Steve Driscoll is being fairly consistent. And so it's allowing him to be able to maintain that position on Lionel Callisto. But Lionel Callisto striving to get his way up to that third position, possibly in the pro points, if he gets a good enough race, and other people have some unfortunate nights tonight. So he's going to be working hard to get up to Driscoll, still just within a second.
We heard Christian talking about the wake of the car ahead. Wonder if Callisto struggling a little bit now that he's getting the dirty air from Driscoll. And could that mean potentially we could see a little bit of strategy tactics? The leapfrog, a very popular one in real F1, and it could work as well here, but you got to certainly pump those good laps in. And Driscoll right now being smooth doesn't bode well for Lionel Callisto if he wants to try and get by with an early stop.
Right, and the other thing that we don't know is we can sort of approximate who's maybe on a 2-stopper and who's on a 1-stopper at this point, but we don't know exact fuel loads, and that can give people a little bit of a window. I know in the pre-race I was saying that maybe I would have ran my race a little bit differently. I 1-stopped it. That definitely was clear in terms of the car pace. In terms of the 2-stoppers, though, there's quite a variety. You can maybe pit anywhere between 5 or 10 laps either side of the kind of the third points of the race, so to speak.
Darling off track, just out of turn 8. Ooh, there's those curbs. You were warning us about those curbs, Christian.
Yeah, they're really evil, and I found the high-speed corners, you've really got to stay off them. And the low-speed corners, you can use them a fair bit, but you do still have to be careful. And it looks like maybe he just got too much of the inside curb there.
Yeah, that was bouncing around like crazy. And without the tires making contact with the pavement, it's hard to get the car to go where you want it to go. So that sends him down to 20th position from that mistake. Now getting close to the time that we could see the first stops start to happen. Our biggest mover thus far before these stops happen is Ryan Toma, up in 8th position, qualified 24th. Whatever he's doing with that race setup, it is working.
Yeah, it looks like he picked his way through that little bit of a mess that we had at the start, and he's had really solid pace. His last lap was a 14.0, so a little bit quicker than Wade ahead of him. Wade ran a 14.1, but definitely faster than the guys behind him, and kind of looks like he's pretty much set for a run to the top 10 today.
Well, sure, he'll be pleased with that one. The 908 bringing it down to speed here of the first few corners, plunging down the hill as Wade Hayes. Oh, and Hayes was turned around. He was the one he was just chasing. More wheel spin.
Yeah, this is a really difficult corner to hold on to it. Oh, goodness. Yeah, he just gets it coming down the exit of the Senna S. Looks like he puts in just a little bit too much power coming down the hill. And that's all what you do to get yourself a good run off the corner. But he just puts in too much. And then just look how much he struggles to get up to speed there. His car just proving to be difficult for everybody, even the pros.
Really incredible. I'm amazed at how well the drivers are doing out there, if I'm honest. I certainly would not be able to do what they are doing. I see William Fletcher in. I think he is a scheduled stop, it looks like.
It's a little bit early on lap 18, but as I was saying in the pre-race, maybe if I'd have ran it a bit differently, I would have pitted on about lap 20 and kind of elongated the later stints, and it'll be interesting to see. Oh, a little bit of a mistake there. This allowed Brian Barnes to slip through into 12th.
Did he get... I see Brian Barnes in 13th.
I believe McGreevy just made a
passing
slight mistake. Oh no, maybe it was Kuhn. Sorry.
Yeah, it looks like Kuhn. And now he's got Brian Bennett. Well, no, Brian Bennett's a lap down. And he's actually trying his best to let lapping cars through. Kevin Hill was behind him chasing Nick Kuhn, but lost a lot of time in trying to put Bennett a lap down.
And guys, I hate to pull you away, but Lionel Kalisto has caught up to the back of Steve Driscoll, and he's as close as he's been in the last couple laps. This is the closest that Lionel has gotten, and Steve Driscoll still being consistent, but looks like Lionel has been able to manage to find his pace. Either that or Steve Driscoll's making a couple of mistakes, but look how late Lionel is on the brakes there. He's going to miss the center S just a little bit, but Steve Driscoll also got a little loose through there. So, wow! Oh, Lionel Kalisto just barely hanging on to it there, coming through that corner as they go to the Desierto del Lago. These two drivers really giving it their all right now.
On the knife's edge for sure, Lionel Kalisto continuing to look strong in the braking zones. He's got it down to 0.4 of a second. So maybe he's finally figured out how to find some pace while he rides in the dirty air of Steve Driscoll ahead. Now working their way through the slower infield portion of the track. We ride on board with Little Train, watching the number 51 lead the way. We're on lap 20 now. Could Lionel maybe think about coming in? He thought about maybe trying to get to the inside down through the Ducksbill. That didn't work.
And Driscoll just ran wide there, and that allowed Lionel Kalisto to take his normal line, but he had to open it up a little bit. But now he's got a really good run. Let's see whether the draft gives him enough speed to catch him by the SNSs.
They both stay out. Slipstream reeling him in down to 1 car length, and he lifts. Working their way back downhill again. This time, Lionel Kalisto not looking as strong in that Senna S, and he falls back from that tiny little gap that he'd managed to close up through the front stretch.
Yeah, Christian, how much does that aerodynamic disturbance affect you as you're going through the Senna S's there in these more twisty bits around the corner when you get this close to a car head?
It's definitely tricky because you pick up a lot more push, and that makes the whole getting on the power even more dangerous because you kind of have to blend the power in when maybe you got a little bit more wheel in than you would have before, or you not quite got it opened out as much on the exits and so on. And I was actually surprised he didn't go for a move on that last lap. Maybe he's just wanting to kind of feel it out a little bit first, but he's definitely quicker. I don't know whether he can get up to Blake Reynolds and challenge him for second, but he could definitely get third here.
Well, that was a big bobble coming off of the junction from Kalisto, unfortunately. So that sends him backwards. We've had a problem with Torres. Mark Torres, also in the junction. He found his way into the grass, turning it completely around. One of the kinetic drivers. Ooh, a little bit too much kinetic energy in the wrong direction. And eventually gets it going, but he falls to 6th. Also, we have lost our first driver of the race. The only retiree thus far is Paul Darling.
Kalisto's actually just fallen back quite a bit. He must have made a mistake earlier in the lap whilst we were looking at Torres there, and he's now going to have to run Steve Driscoll down again.
Yeah, he almost spun it coming out of the Senna S's and managed to save it and pick up speed again, but now he's almost 2.3 behind, so this is going to be a difficult recovery for him.
Certainly has some work to do. We're getting towards the edge of the pit strategy if you're splitting it up evenly into 2 stops, so expecting to see at least a few more cars come in. I see Kevin Hill has taken what looks like a scheduled stop. Oh, and Wade Hayes. Oh, big damage on the front of the car, and he's going to take a tow.
This is rough. We've seen this quite a few times today, and it's just going to be a little bit too much power coming out of the corner. That's going to spin him around and watch him just collect the barrier. Oh, my goodness. That's a front end gone.
He took a tow into the pits, and I'm not sure if he's already had to take his spare car. Watching one more time, and this nose cam is unfortunately going to disappear. So, Wade Hayes, will he return to try and finish this race, or is he going to call it a day? This will give Brian Bennett one more position. I'm sure he'll be happy about that. Meanwhile, as we come back to the track, we've got a bit of a battle, it looks like, here on screen. This is Trying to figure out who these two are. Oh, not for position, apparently. That's Brian Bennett that we're looking at. Getting a spot. And then, of course, Gall in 18th. But just ahead of them, Bob Beltrami, the salami. We haven't got to talk about him much. He's in a nice little fight with Scott Corbin.
Yeah, Bob's been doing okay this race, but he's been struggling a little bit on the exits, been getting too much wheel spin. He's almost spun it around a couple of times and lost quite a few positions, so he let Scott Corbin by there. Scott's been pretty quick in practice earlier today, so Scott having his own struggles, but take a look at that. Scott Corbin extremely slow through the final corner. Bob's going to have to decide whether or not to pass him again here, but if he's worried that Scott's going to be faster, he probably won't do it. Let's see what happens. Yeah, he's backing off, and he's going to be our first pitter, looks like.
Getting it down to the pit limit speed. And I believe, let's see, Kelly should go on by. Where is Beltrami going to come back out? I think Jeff Schmeier will manage to get him. Schmeier, though, has been out since the early laps as he was involved in that big kerfluffle in turn 1. Looks like the salami going to return in 22nd position. Meanwhile, Reed Miller has now caught Thunhorst, and I see Kalisto and Clement in. Oh, and Thunhorst was off track.
Yeah, Thunhorst went wide in the final corner, allowing Reed Miller to go by. Reed Miller's not going to pit here, so he's going to capitalize off of this. Take a look on Thunhorst's onboard here.
It's all driver error. Ooh, whoa, he had to catch it on the way in. So that sent him immediately into the grass. Allowed Reed Miller to move into 6th. Thunhorst now in his stall. Clement returned in 8th position. Kalisto returns in 7th. In so and Alliance, out just like that.
Alliance all taking the opportunity to do the pit stops here, so it looks like they're going for the 2-stop strategy. We're going to see who goes for that 1-stop. Travis Warling's still out there with Blake Reynolds, Steve Driscoll, many guys out there, but you're going to see, Travis Warling into the pits now.
In fact, I'm seeing a number of cars coming in on our cameras. So our leader in, Reynolds stays out. Don't think he's going to be able to jump him in the pit cycle, because he was awful far back.
Yeah, he was around 6 seconds back. I definitely don't think he'll jump him, but what he does have is he does have a lot of clean track ahead of him now, and that's really at a premium around here. So if he can just run a couple of good laps here, he can definitely close that gap up, and he'll have to deal with less lap traffic when he does pit.
And as you said, Christian, with the tire wear not being a factor around here, and with low fuel being kind of at a benefit, if he's got a couple laps in that tank, it might be worth it to stay out longer.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I wonder if that's exactly what he's thinking. So the riding shotgun, former champion, now coming around. So does he stay out another lap, or does he come in? He is hustling the car, though, now. Absolutely sliding it through the junction.
A massive moment there. Good job to hold on to it.
He's coming in.
So probably not going to see enough of a difference in just that one lap between them in the stop. Could still gain a little bit of time, of course. Still waiting on Driscoll to pit. Looks like Steve Driscoll stays out.
Yeah, we got a couple of non-pitters. We got Driscoll, Mark Torres, and Reed Miller, who we saw battling, as well as Marcus Treacy and Richie Hearn, who have not pit yet.
Few of our long runners, potentially, maybe single stoppers. There's the comparison between Warling and Reynolds. Pretty close, about a second apart, though, and I think Reynolds was the quicker of the two. Yeah, he was.
Yeah, looked like his stop time was just a little bit less, which would make sense. I mean, that first run he went a lap longer, so he had more fuel on board, and he'll have to take less at this stop. And gained not quite a second, but a significant amount.
Oh, Meyer McGreevy has just gone around.
That was out of Magrulo up towards the junction. His teammate Driscoll goes by, puts him a lap down. Slow, lurid spin for that F1 car to eventually face the wrong way. Is it easy to damage the underside of the car by going off track, Christian?
If I'm honest, I'm not exactly sure. What I can say, though, is that it's very easy to make that mistake he did there. For the setup that I was driving, it was kind of really balanced between kind of not quite full throttle, so maybe like 95%, and you were going from second up to fourth, and it was very, very easy to have that moment happen, and it was just... It doesn't surprise me that we're seeing this a lot, just because of how tricky this car is in the acceleration zones.
Dirty Torque driver Reed Miller into the pits, taking tires and fuel. You wouldn't know what it was like to get under trait damage because you never went off track, right, Christian?
I actually don't think I did, much to my own surprise, if I'm honest. I went off track a lot in practice, but in the race I was honestly quite content that I wasn't fast, but I didn't make any real mistakes, and I didn't have any damage, so that was definitely much better this year than the Suzuka race last year.
Just behind them, you saw that blue number 28 car. That was William Fletcher, was off track as Reed was coming back out of the lane. So looks like Fletcher's able to get on without too many issues after that, thankfully.
So our remaining people we have yet to pit, Steve Driscoll and Mark Torres, as well as Richie Hearn back in 11th position. Steve's still going around, so he's definitely, I think he's probably going to do that one stopper. We're going to find out, though.
Meanwhile, on screen, seeing some battling down through to the Citadel Lago. Also got some close fights behind them. That's between Barnes, Kelly, and Beltrami. Kelly just taking the spot away from Barnes for 17th. Beltrami just ahead of them. Kelly is on his second stop, but that's because he was involved in the accident at the start. Took his spare car and is back out now. Driscoll and Hearn look to be the only two that are continuing on that one-stop strategy.
And Driscoll's actually putting in, well, pretty respectable lap times, especially for a one-stopper, and I'm hoping that he is on a one-stopper, because if he is, he'll actually be in play here.
Well, that's fantastic for Steve. 51 ticks off another lap. Getting close to halfway through, so he probably would be coming in relatively soon here. He's leading a train of cars who are a lap down. That's Tracy, Hill, and Corbin that are behind him. That's not for position with our leader, but amongst each other, they are for position.
Taking a look now at the lap comparison between Driscoll and Warling, you can see that Driscoll was losing time to Warling significantly, but then recently Warling has been catching him by about half a second a lap. So even though Driscoll's times are good, I don't know if they're good enough to put him in contention at the end.
Yeah, when it comes to the difference between the one and the two stoppers, you have to gain around about 20 seconds if you're a two-stopper car versus a one-stopper. So that Warling is just under 10 seconds behind, and Steve still has to pit. It's kind of difficult to say at the moment as to how close it'll be, but I definitely think that Steve is closer than perhaps the initial opening run suggested.
Stays out for one more. They're back in 7th place. Remember, we were talking about Toma. Well, he continues on in 7th now, another position up, with Reed Miller trying to chase him down and actually getting relatively close here in the slower portions of the lap.
Yeah, and I'm not exactly sure what happened to Thunhorse over the course of that whole pit cycle, but Thunhorse, who was right on the bumper of Toma, is now almost 5.5 seconds behind his Alliance teammates. So this is very interesting here, as Reed Miller is now climbing up to the back of Ryan Toma. So this is very interesting developments for everybody involved in this battle.
Toma certainly looked good. He overtook his teammate early on, and since has been just on a flyer out here today. So he starts into lap 31. We ride on board with Toma looking up ahead. On Miller looking up ahead. Miller, of course, we usually watch over in the Camel GT series. Very different car over there that he drives, the Audi 90.
Both of these guys actually doing a great job. Both of them gained a lot of spots from where they started. especially Tomer. He's the biggest mover by far, starting 24th and up to 7th. Unheard of, really, in a Formula One car.
We did cover these Williams cars some time ago in another series, and I seem to recall that Reed Miller was driving in that. It was the Batteries Not Included series. So I guess I should not be surprised that we see the Dirty Torque drivers show up here and give chase. Still not seeing Driscoll come in. 35 and 36 should be the halfway mark on the laps. Granted, he doesn't have to do it exactly halfway. It all depends on what he feels is best for the strategy.
It looks like he and Richie Hearn are the only ones going for the one stop today. Yeah, will be very interesting to see where Driscoll comes out with the average pit stop, with the average time on pit lane being about 24.5 seconds. It's going to be interesting to see where he comes out. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Christian, but he's going to have to take more fuel than the two stoppers, correct?
Yeah, he will, and he'll lose around about anywhere between 2 and 4 seconds because of that extra fuel he'll have to take. But he is doing a great job right now. He's actually extending the gap a little bit this second, which sounds kind of strange because Warling's obviously pitted once, but Warling now actually has more fuel on board than Driscoll does, so this is actually a point in the race where Driscoll's actually gaining, and we can pretty safely assume he's on a one-stopper at this point. It's lap 33. If he's doing a one-stopper, he's probably pitting in the next 2 to 3, and if he was doing a two-stopper, it's definitely too late for that first stop.
Watching behind them at the action that's been going on in the mid-pack. Keep seeing what I think is someone passing, but I think it's my timing and scoring letting me know that Richie Hearn is the last car on the lead lap, which on the same strategy as Driscoll, that probably doesn't feel very good for the number 70, knowing that he still has a long ways to go.
Yeah, Richie's entering into the Senna S's right now, and Steve Driscoll just entering them at the same, just a couple seconds behind. So Driscoll is going to be passing Richie Hearn and putting him a lap down very shortly. Wow, look at this battle going on.
Yeah, this is just behind them. That is Pat Kelly, Kevin Hill, and that is Travis Warling. So he is not a part of that. He's in second. He's the one chasing Driscoll. That's his teammate on Unorthodox, Kevin Hill. Hill's going to try and let him through without holding him up so that he can go and fight for the victory.
And I was actually just keeping tabs a little bit on the gaps between Warling and Reynolds, and Reynolds looks like he's just getting through traffic a little bit better, and he's actually closed that gap down a little bit more now. It's just over 4 seconds, so this second run of the race, it looks like Reynolds is perhaps a little bit faster, but we'll have to see what happens once Warling's clear of traffic.
You know, for all we make a big deal out of Alliance and Kinetic and riding shotgun, Driscoll, who's in first, Warling, who is in second, and of course we saw Kevin Hill, who's 15th, so maybe not as much of a factor, but that's all unorthodox driver. 2 of them in the top 2 right now. Now, part of it is on strategy as we see Banfield come in. But Unorthodox seems to have a good handle on these high downforce open wheelers.
Yeah, absolutely. They've come in as a pretty new team, and they've done a really great job this year.
I'd say so myself. Back out for Banfield and returns to the track.
In this battle we're taking a look at right now, Scott Corbin just made his way past Marcus Tracy in a very aggressive fashion down the front stretch there, getting very close to the wall. These two have been battling for the last couple laps, and Corbin seemed very eager to get by, so he's made his way by confidently. I was going to start to pull away from Marcus Tracy if my guesses are correct.
Certainly his pace looks like he should be able to stretch that gap. All right, we're on lap 35. 36 would start next time by. What does Steve Driscoll do this time? He's coming up to the pit entry, as is Richie Hearn. Both of them staying out, but Hearn is going to let him through. So that puts him a lap down. There is now only one car on the lead lap that is on a one-stop strategy.
And honestly, the longer he can stay out here, I think the better, because it looks like he's actually in really clear air and he's not in amongst the lap traffic, so it's not as much of a problem for him.
Both he and Warling have one more stop to make. The big difference being that Driscoll, of course, has to take on, well, not technically more fuel, but has to sit and wait stationary longer on this stop compared to Travis Warling.
But if you're taking a look at the gaps that are up there on our screens, the intervals, you can see that Travis Warling is only 12.8 seconds behind Driscoll. And that is not enough for Driscoll to come in, get his pit stop, and come out ahead of Warling. So what Driscoll's going to have to hope is that when he comes out, he's able to put in some good lap times and keep Warling under about 20 seconds in order to try and make this work and try and catch him when Warling comes in for his second pit stop.
Right, exactly. He'll be behind up until the point where Warling and Reynolds make their next stop, but then afterwards they'll have to run him down and chase him. And actually, just looking at that, the biggest thing for Driscoll in my mind is that he's currently got 28 seconds over Lionel in fourth. Now that means that he's going to come out in third, and that's huge to me because it means he's not going to fight anybody.
Right now, he was, we saw he is taking his fuel and he's coming back out. He'll be just ahead of Kalisto, I believe.
And while he's coming out, Brian McGreevy has spun in the Senna S's, so that's going to hold up the people who were coming through the Senna S's to catch up to Driscoll. They're all lap cars, though, so you can see that gaggle behind Driscoll as he goes by. That's actually freed him up and given him even clearer air.
All right, so here's your gaps now that Driscoll has taken his stop. Kalisto, 4.8 seconds behind. Warling, who leads the race, is 12 seconds ahead of Steve Driscoll. Blake Reynolds is sandwiched in there too, also on a two-stop strategy. Not too far behind Warling right now, 2.7 seconds. A little bit of lap traffic or maybe a couple mistakes from Warling could offer an opportunity for the number one. Looks like Reed Miller's caught up to Toma. We've been watching them reel together bit by bit, and is this about to erupt?
Yeah, it looks like Reed Miller has been making good assessment of Ryan Toma. He's trying to get into position to make a good pass. Let's see whether or not he can set him up here in the final corner. He's going to go a little bit wider and try and cut it a little bit earlier, but look at that. He's extremely squirrely on the brakes and on throttle, and that's going to drop him back to around a second behind him, and that's going to lose him the opportunity to try and make a pass.
Yeah, he's way too far back, and you can see from the chopper cam just how big the gap has gotten between them up the front stretch. Toma continues to prove himself to be someone to watch out for in this car. Maybe that qualifying wasn't quite what he wanted. Maybe he had a little bit more in it. Running in 7th position, fending off the likes of Reed Miller. You know, I don't believe, unless my time in scoring is lying to me, Richie Hearn has yet to pit.
Yes, interesting strategy. I'm not exactly sure what he's doing here. I'm wondering if he's just really filled the car up and he's going to have a short run at the end.
I mean, that's as best a guess as any, I think. Because I'm not showing any time down for him on pit lane at any point during this race, and he's running in 10th position.
I mean, he is within the pit window of Matthew Thunhorst, but at the same time, he still has to pit. So, very interesting to see how this works. Whoa, take a look at this. Matthew Thunhorst looks like he's under pressure from a lap car behind him. So, Richie Hearn, I don't know about the strategy. I think it's a little too late in the game for this. What do you think, Christian?
Yeah, I'm only kind of thinking that perhaps given that he was starting 21st and knowing how important a clean track is, that he figured that he was going to be in traffic anyway, so that there was no pace advantage in low fuel in the car. And he's maybe overfilled it just a bit so that he can run a couple more laps in clean air, because he does have a lot of clean track there. And perhaps that's his game plan here.
We've skipped up to Looks like Brian McGreevy and Jeff Schmeier in a nice little... Oh, whoa! That was Rob Gall and Greevy. McGreevy turned around by that contact. Clement squeaks through. He was one of our leaders trying to find his way past that. Mark Torres as well. That certainly would probably made their hearts skip a beat.
Yeah, that was contact there, nose to gearbox, and oh my goodness. Take a look at just how much he's crabbing as he drives away here.
Yeah, that was the number 17 and the red and white car that we saw get into him. Brian McGreevy, unfortunately, to pit lane with that contact.
Oh, Scott Corbin's gone
retirees. Oh, and did he lose his nose? No, looks like he still got it. He managed to stay out of the wall. Yet again, out of turn 9.
It's one of those corners that just kind of tricks you into thinking you're going to be okay, and then you're not. And it looks like he just kept it out of the wall and didn't quite hit it like we saw Wade Hayes do. But still, it's even in those kind of scenarios where, yeah, okay, you didn't hit anything, but you did lose a lot of time by making that mistake.
You know, we haven't mentioned it yet, I don't think. Have we talked about the weather at all? Because it's hot on this track, and we were kind of shocked by it initially when we came into the warm-up session. There you see 122 degrees Fahrenheit as going wide. That was Kevin Hill, and that was for position that Banfield just got through.
Yeah, 122 is something else, especially with only a 66 degree. Oh, look at this. Whoa. Ross Banfield off track ahead of Kevin Hill. This might give Kevin Hill an opportunity to come back at him. Is he going to go around the outside here? He decides better of it, but can Banfield hold on to it? Yes, he can. That's going to be maintaining position for the two of them, but Bob Beltrami now up to the back of these two.
Don't know how Ross feels about paved runoff, but right now I suspect he's a little bit grateful. They've got the leaders coming up on them. That's Steve Driscoll. Third place driver gets by Bob Beltrami. We are down to only 10 cars left on the lead lap, by the way. There's a lot of lap traffic that they're dealing with.
And this is critical for Driscoll to clear these guys as fast as possible. We were talking about the pit stop time being approximately 24 seconds. That was really close to one of his teammates right there, but he's just got past, and now he's only got one more, and then he's got a bit of clear track. But he needs to be within 24 seconds of both Walling and Reynolds when they pit to have any chance of coming out ahead of them. And he's going to absolutely have to play defense at the end of the race here.
Speaking of that, if we could get any, if we could pull up a lap comparison between Driscoll and Warling, Driscoll has actually been falling back ever since starting this run, and it's starting to affect him. I know he's taking more fuel, but yeah, take a look at this. Warling has been putting almost a second on him for a couple of laps now, so Driscoll not doing as well at the start of this second stint for him.
And that is the reverse of what we saw before Driscoll stopped. So I think this bears fruit on what you're talking about, Christian, that it all kind of comes down to the fuel level in the car. It seems like that weight determines a lot about what you can do.
Absolutely.
Oh, and our new champion is around. Not the way he wanted to finish out this season. Yeah. I don't think he hit anything. He stays out of the Armco. And he thankfully had clear track to... Oh, no. When he comes back, he hits the wall. And these wings are sensitive. Did Richie Hearn finally pit? He did. Richie Hearn's coming out. And he's going to slot into 16th spot, while many ahead of him do still need to take a second stop. Doesn't look too bad for Hearn.
Yeah, it looks like he might be fighting some of those guys on the two-stop who are maybe 2 to 3 spots ahead of him. We've got Banfield is a one-stopper in 13th, so he's definitely not going to pass him.
Is Banfield the one? Yeah, I guess he is, now that I look at it. Because he had 2 stops in, but I suppose one of those was at the start. If he got involved in the wreck, is certainly the car looks squirrely for the 777. He nearly lost it into Magrulo. Trevor Clement might have some company up in 5th place. Mark Torres has suddenly run him down. Oh, and Clement was wide coming through the junction. Torres, not so much. That's going to give a great launch as we ride on board, covering off the inside. Clement going to try and fend him off, but this is going to be difficult as they get up to speed. It's a drag race down to the corner. Nose ahead for Mark Torres, and much better on the brakes. He makes the apex. The 05 gets into P5.
Normally in a position like that, you'd expect that the inside driver in the corner might have a better opportunity to make that corner, but based upon the way that the Senna S is constructed, actually it's the person on the outside who can brake later, because the way that the turn works, you snake down left and right, and so you actually need more of an opportunity for turn in there.
We've had a problem with Marcus Tracy. I think he may have found the wall. This is out of turn 8. You can see he's trying to wait for a clearing as we now go to the replay. Ugh. Nosed it in. It wasn't as hard as it looked from the other angle that I saw it from. So maybe he's going to get away with that.
Oh, no, it looks like he's crabbing a little bit.
And in fact, he's got Brian Barnes and Nick Kuhn behind him. I'm not sure if they know he's damaged. Well, now they certainly know, because they just breeze on by. Made that look easy. This is for position, though. Kuhn might have an opportunity. He's going to get to the inside. Popsicle Man does not defend. Oh, but he tries to break later into the Senna S. He eventually has to slot in. That's Rob Gall, also for position behind them. All of this fighting over 17th.
And those kind of last couple of moves that we've seen there into the center S's kind of highlight Adam's point about it being an interesting set of corners where there's multiple different lines and multiple different approaches. We saw one car go to the outside, one car go to the inside through there, and both make successful passes. So it's a really good set of corners for racing.
Barnes gave up another spot, and I'm not sure why, but we've since jumped over to Reed Miller, chasing Ryan Toma. These two have been together for a long time now. Miller's been wanting to get by that 908, but there's not been the opportunity quite yet. Wow, he closes in, though, under braking into the duckbill, and maybe that compromises his exit, because once again, starts to fall away.
Yeah, Reed Miller unable to make progress on Ryan Toma through this final corner. Ryan Toma's got a way better understanding, but Ryan Toma gets a little bit loose on the gas. That's going to give Reed Miller a good opportunity, but I still don't think he's got enough guns to get up to him before the Senna S's. He's going to have to try it down the second straight.
Sticks with him up and across the line. Down through the Senna S's. They're coming up to Brian Barnes here, and this lap traffic could play a factor as we look at the lap comparison.
Yeah, it really looks like Toma's got a lot of straight line speed, and it's making him really difficult to pass.
If you're going to be fast any place, better be fast in a straight line, I suppose. So what's Brian Barnes going to do? He's been overtaken. He doesn't seem real interested in fighting with those he's around, so should be able to be polite, but now they're starting to catch him in the infield portion. It's a lot harder to try and pull out of the way here as we watch on board the Dog Bear Red driver. Tries to stay off to the side, still doesn't give a chance to try and let those lead lap cars through. Oh, well, that's going to do it, but that's going to hurt Miller quite a bit on the exit of the junction. Meanwhile, we've got some of our scheduled pit stops happening up at the top of the field. Mark Torres in for his second.
All the puzzle pieces starting to come into place now with everyone as they're going to start to pit. We're going to see exactly where those one-stoppers are. There's only 3 of them in this race. It's Travis Warling. Let me remember who it was. Was it Marcus Tracy? No.
One-stoppers was Driscoll and Hearn. And then we had...
Banfield.
Yeah, Banfield. Thank
was
you.
the other one.
I've been keeping my eye on Driscoll and Warling to see who's got the advantage in this particular pit stop run. And Steve Driscoll has actually been losing significantly more time. Take a look at this. Driscoll still losing over half a second a lap to Travis Warling. Travis may need to extend his stint a little bit because he is making significant time on Driscoll. And if he comes in now, he will get passed by Driscoll in the pits, and then Warling will have 6 seconds to try and gain back up to Driscoll by the end of this race. But if Warling can extend his stint and continue pulling those laps, then he'll be able to make the pass and still be able to pit and come back out.
Here's a thought, though. Maybe they're thinking like F1 strategists. Warling and Driscoll are teammates, and they started up towards the front, first on the pole for Warling, third for Driscoll. They're fighting Blake Reynolds. Is this split strategy just to kind of maybe cover things off to give themselves the best opportunity for the win for the team?
It's possible, but I have a feeling that the drivers might have something else to say on that score, and it's going to be so close. I feel like we're going to potentially see Driscoll and Warling side by side when Warling comes out of the pits.
And we had McGreevy off course. He had to take a tow. Could this be race over?
Oh,
That is high riding the curb in spectacular fashion.
yeah, he just fell off the outside of this curve here. Going through it, thinks he's got it, gets onto the curb and just dips those right tires just a little bit, falls off the curb and high centers the car on it, and it just skates like a skateboard straight into the inside wall.
Hope he doesn't have a butt kicker system on there, because he probably have felt that one.
That looked like a pretty nasty wreck, and like Adam said, it's the low ride heights on these things that the curbs they're flat and you can use them a lot, but you do have to be careful with them because of things like that. If you just overstep it and the car bottoms out, it just instantly kills you. You have no hope of hanging on to that.
Meanwhile, watching Miller and Toma continue this battle that never seems to end.
And Joe, I can report that Travis Warling just crossed over the 24-second mark ahead of Steve Driscoll, so it's going to be neck and neck when they come out of the pits next time. When Travis comes out of the pits to see whether or not Driscoll can stay ahead of him. But the longer Travis stays out, the more advantage he's pulling on Driscoll right now.
I wonder if he's aware of that as well. Lap 50 should see him in very soon. We see Clement and Callisto taking their stops. This is from 4th and 5th. They're going to be overtaken by Toma and Miller.
It's actually interesting because Ryan Toma and Matthew Thunhorst actually stopped on the same lap as those two. So it's very interesting to see that Toma's continuing his run. That means that they're splitting up the strategy a little bit for the Alliance drivers.
Oh, and Reynolds is in. Reynolds pits from 2nd place. So where is this going to send him in regards to Driscoll, who's coming up the hill?
I think he'll definitely be behind. It's just a matter of how much he'll be behind. And I've just been watching Driscoll the past couple of laps, and it's looked like he's really struggled with lap traffic.
I don't know about this. He's going to be behind, but just barely, because Blake Reynolds is right behind him.
This isn't what Unorthodox wants to see right now. They were hoping that Driscoll would have probably a couple seconds on Blake Reynolds. With Blake within 0.4 of a second, this is danger zone.
Yeah, that was very, very close. That was actually a lot closer than I was expecting Reynolds to be. And looking at that and how close Reynolds was there, I think it's almost certain now that Warling will come out ahead.
So
maybe, Joe, that's what you were talking about. Maybe that was the plan all along, is to have Driscoll be the pick between Reynolds and Warling. Wow, take a look at this. Reynolds really close on the back of Driscoll.
Got chopped off coming through Mergulo. Driscoll out of there is going to have a little bit of an advantage, but Blake Reynolds will get a good slipstream up the hill. How fast is that number one in a straight line? That's the question. They come up to the first corner into the Senna S, and I'd say he's too far back to attack, but he had to think about it, and he's got a number of laps to try and make that overtake now with fresher tires.
I think it's going to be difficult for him, though. It looks like Reynolds has got a lot of downforce on his car, and we saw through the infield there, he's much, much quicker than Driscoll, but down the straights, he just can't get close enough.
And one thing we missed is that Miller is by Toma with a quicker pit stop. That gives him 7th place.
Joe, it actually wasn't a quicker pit stop. Toma actually spun the tires coming off of 4 on their in lap, and so that allowed Reed Miller to get by before they came into the pits. So it's impressive that Toma's even as close as he is to Reed, because he was about 3 seconds behind exiting pit lane.
So Toma's got his work cut out for him if he wants to get that spot back. Does he want to get that spot back? Because he's already climbed so many positions in this race. Miller's not doing too bad either, starting 15th and now sitting in the 7th spot. They're a lap down, but we still need Warling to come into pit, so that should put them back onto the lead lap. As right now we ride on board with Reynolds giving chase on Driscoll, getting awful close up the front stretch, but not nearly close enough.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Christian, but this is probably exactly what Warling wants to see, with his teammate playing kind of rear guard to him before with Travis on his pit stop. Travis still has to pit, but this gives him a really good opportunity because Reynolds is losing time behind Driscoll.
Oh, definitely, and like we were saying, Reynolds has gone for the move, but Driscoll's going to have the better line on the second hairpin here.
Back to the inside through 9. Reynolds still thinking about it. Going to be eager on the brakes. Trying to see if he can sneak through. Still being denied as Driscoll fends him off. Incredible stuff between the unorthodox driver and the right-hand shotgun driver back onto the main straight. This time, though, much closer from Blake Reynolds. He is on the move. Warling also comes into the pits. If he comes out with them, like we initially expected, that could complicate things even more. Down into the first corner, Blake Reynolds takes a look to the inside. He's given space by Driscoll. Off the corner, he wants to get the better run. Oh, and wheel spin for the number 1 is going to deny him, as Warling is already back out and well ahead.
This is what I love about this place. It's possible to do wheel-to-wheel racing all the way around, and it takes the utmost from the driver to make that happen. These two putting on a clinic for us today.
Reynolds going to be kicking himself for that mistake. That cost him lots of track position there. He wants to be much closer if he is going to hope for a second place. And certainly now that he has been stuck behind Driscoll, this looks like that could be the nail in the coffin for the win for Reynolds, because I don't see how he could get by and chase down Warling in the same time.
Yeah, he didn't really have the pace in the previous run to get by Warling on speed, and he needed to be closer than this. And I think it's only really a matter of time, to be honest, before we see Reynolds clear Driscoll. But every single lap that he stays behind is one less that he's got to get after Warling, and it's probably anywhere between a half second to a second loss.
Watching from Driscoll, Reynolds has regained the time. This time not spinning the tires out through the Curva de Sol. In fact, he's starting to gain. If he's really aggressive, he could maybe send one into turn 4 here, but certainly doesn't look like he's willing to try that yet. Less than 20 laps to go here in this race.
I think he's going to have to try something in the infield. I think that's really the only place where he's better. We've seen he can't get it to happen down the straight. He's tried a couple of times in the infield, and it looks like he's getting set up for another attempt at it right here.
They've got lap traffic. That's Ray Partridge in front of them that you can see. Could he maybe affect this? Is he going to be able to pull out of the way before he hurts Driscoll too much? This is not a good spot to get slowed up, and Reynolds almost gets into the back of Driscoll, finally pulling off to the side. Partridge lets them both through, but has the damage been done? Straight line speed still working out better for the number 51, and Reynolds got to be getting a little bit frustrated now.
Oh, take a look at this. Driscoll gets a little bit loose. That's going to give an opportunity to Blake Reynolds. He's going to try it around the outside, but Driscoll managing to hang on to it, but I think he's completely opened up at this stage.
Yeah, this is Reynolds' best chance. He's got to take it, surely.
He's going to be given the inside, but he's not quite good enough to be able to fully move the pass. And unfortunately, as they come down to Ferradura, he has to give up the ghost. He tried it once coming up into turn 8 here. Is he going to try it again? Not quite. Up in front of them, Rob Gall tries to pull out of the way. Nicely done by the lapped car. Wow, I am severely impressed.
Oh no!
By
Driscoll going around!
Commentator's curse strikes again. Just about to say the defense that Driscoll has been putting up was impeccable. Almost looked like, did he catch the grass on the way in, maybe?
It looked like he just maybe overdid the braking and tried to cut it a little bit more. And honestly, that's kind of what I was saying about how it was only really a matter of time before Reynolds got past. I can totally understand why Steve was trying to hold him off, though. I mean, anybody would do the same. It's the last run of the race, but I think maybe he just had to push a little bit harder than he had done before, and just a little mistake, and obviously it loses him the spot. He's not going to fall any lower than third, so definitely worth going for the defense there.
For our viewers who haven't been watching the timing on the left side, the pace of the top 3 has been so impressive that Driscoll, even with that spin, is 22 seconds ahead of Lionel Kalisto currently. Well, Blake Reynolds has clear air, but he's got 5.6 seconds up to Travis Worling. We've already seen passing is relatively difficult. This is a tall order. Looks like Richie Hearn got another spot, and this was over Kevin Hill. Clean pass down into turn 4. That moves Hearn up into 12th now.
Yeah, a lot of this mid-pack, I've been watching them as these battles have gone on up front, and they're really struggling on those rear tires. They're just spinning them constantly, and so a lot of these guys in the back, I think, are just trying to survive till the end, and that is a taller order than you may think, to survive to the end and maintain position. And so a lot of these guys just trying to play it safe here.
We watch onto the front stretch. A little bit of a look to the inside from Brian Bennett on Kevin Hill, but Bennett is a lap down, so that's not for position. Instead, it's Hill still chasing Hearn. Hearn looking strong off a Curva de Sol. Just ahead of him, that is a lapped car. That's Marcus Tracy. That's not for position as well.
I want to give a report on the battle between Reed Miller and Ryan Toma. Reed Miller has been able to pull away from Ryan Toma quite a bit here, gap of about 1.5 seconds. So that's given him an opportunity to get some fresh air and to keep Ryan Toma from challenging.
In fact, one of the closest fights we've got is honestly for 18th position, Wade Hayes and Nick Kuhn. Kuhn had a look up the inside into the first corner. Hayes is going to get a much better run off of it, and you can see all the time that's lost by the number 19 just by that failed attempt. He's going to have to regroup. In fact, it's looking like he is losing ground.
I think Wade actually just made it by him going into the Senna S's under braking, so I think Wade is clearing Kuhn at this stage.
I think you're correct. Wade, actually, yeah, Wade started 19th, and I believe he's one of the ones that had some problems along the way and was sent down the order, so he's playing catch-up. Let's run through our order for those of you who are just joining us, with the final 10 laps coming up pretty quickly here. Travis Worling is your leader. He was your pole sitter. He didn't lead every lap, though. It's been a contra strategy from one of his teammates. Still, he's well clear at this point from the second place driver, which is Blake Reynolds. 5-second gap back to him. Reynolds has closed in just a little bit since we last looked, so maybe a slightly better pace than Worling, but it could be too little too late. Then in third place, Driscoll was the one that was on the alternate strategy. Teammates with Travis Warling. He tried to hold off Blake Reynolds. He came out just ahead of him after Blake's final stop, but it was not to be. He falls to third and is 6 seconds behind. In fourth place, it is Lionel Kalisto. We mentioned this before. 22, now 23 seconds back from the podium. Little Train really had not much hope, as the pace does not seem to be there to be challenged to spray the champagne. Then in fifth, it is Mark Torres rounding out your top five. A little bit of a quiet race. We saw him with some action early on, but since the pit stops, it's just kind of been him running on his lonesome. What's the next five look like, Adam?
Yeah, definitely. We have Trevor Clement in sixth position. Trevor's been doing a decent job ever since he came out of the pits. He's been running his quiet race as well, just kind of doing the Alliance jog in sixth place. Reed Miller in seventh has had a little bit more of an exciting... Oh, actually, we have to go away. It looks like Kevin Hill has spun Lionel Kalisto.
Ooh, and that was lap traffic. Kalisto stays in fourth place. There it is in turn 8. Just comes up behind him in a slight tip. But this puts him under pressure from Torres, who's now within 0.7 of a second. We'll watch one more time. Closing rate can be a little bit high sometimes. An Orthodox driver not expecting to get right under the gearbox that way. As that was happening, Blake Reynolds is catching Warling because he's at the fastest lap of the race so far.
Yeah, and he's cut the gap down by about half a second just in the last lap alone. So Blake Reynolds is actually climbing up, and with 10 laps to go, if he keeps up this pace, he might be there.
It's possible that he might have an opportunity at it. And actually, interestingly, in the pit stops, Reynolds definitely came out closer to Driscoll than I was expecting, based on the previous stop deltas. And I have to wonder, maybe both Reynolds and Warling perhaps were really, really tight on fuel, and that's how they were able to kind of get the gaps that they did. That said, if Reynolds gets there, it's going to be difficult to pass. We saw how hard it was for him to pass Driscoll, and against the car on equal tires, I think it'll be more of the same.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the fuel as well, that the way that Warling is suddenly backing in bit by bit into Reynolds, you have to wonder. The pit stop times were about the same between them on that last stop. Even though they pitted on different laps, as we're now down to 10 to go. Torres still giving chase on Kalisto. Lionel's not going to be happy with Hill after this race, considering he was plenty safe from Torres before that spin.
What Torres doing... He's catching up to the back of Lionel. Lionel's is struggling with his rear tires now. I think he's got to cool him down a little bit still, but Torres has got pace, and he's just running consistent laps. He actually hasn't really changed anything since getting this close to Kalisto, so he's just running a really strong mental game this race so far.
He had a bit of misfortune at the beginning, but looks like he's come back strong from it, and he just seems to be getting better and better as the race goes.
Watching them coming down to the Ducks, Bill. There's more lap traffic in front of him. Corbin, Hill, the one who spun him, and then Wayne Hutchison. We're watching this, but we really, at some point, might have to jump away to the battle for the lead because, well, they're getting closer, and that's not what Warling wants to see in these dying stages.
Yeah, take a look at that lap delta. 0.8 seconds on the last lap. Blake Reynolds is scything through this traffic like it is nothing. He is closing very quickly. He's almost down to 3.5 seconds behind Travis Warling. He is gaining very quickly, Christian.
Yeah, and honestly, it looks like Warling is maybe finding the lap traffic just a little bit difficult to get through, and it kind of looks to me like it's Reynolds is definitely fast. There's no dispute about that. But it looks to me, especially on that last lap, that it was more that Warling was perhaps slower than he should be for his pace for the rest of the race. And it definitely brings about the question as to the fuel, as to how tight he is on the fuel.
Again, Reynolds looking for his 4th win, already the winningest over in the Americas region this season. And Warling is looking for his 2nd win of the season. He's got to survive 8 more laps to do it. We've ducked back to Callisto once again because he's caught traffic. He gets by Corbin. Torres is now going to have to scream by, and being on this front stretch, that's going to be a lot easier for him.
Yeah, and Joe, through the middle sector, Torres almost sent Callisto around as well. So Callisto really struggling to get past Corbin through that middle sector. Now he's got Kevin Hill ahead of him. So Callisto struggling with the lap traffic quite a bit more than Blake Reynolds is. Blake Reynolds has chopped another half second off of Travis Warling's lead.
Kevin Hill just in front of Callisto. He was the one that turned Little Train around not long ago. Is he going to pull aside for him, let him through a second time? The Kinetic driver is certainly watching this with eager eyes, hoping that maybe this could open a door. Still stuck behind Hill, who doesn't move aside through the infield section yet. Callisto getting ever closer behind him. Still nothing, down into the braking. Finally pulls off to the side, and it looks like he's going to let Callisto through. So now Mark Torres has to try and get by, but he's going to catch him. Whoa, as Hill goes way wide through the first corner. I think this might actually make it pretty easy for Torres. Indeed, he pulls off to the side. Torres now, though, up to 1.1 second behind Callisto. A little bit more of a comfortable breathing space for Little Train.
Yeah, and it looks like Callisto in clean air might be a little bit quicker than Torres is, but I think Callisto, he definitely has to be careful. If Torres gets near him, that Kinetic car is very quick down the straights. And it'll definitely be easier, I think, for Torres to pass Callisto than it will be for Callisto to repass Torres.
Last time by at the line, Reynolds was 0.3 quicker than Warling on the lap. We're down to 6 laps to go. The gap has shrunk to about 3.3, but the inroads look like they're getting a little bit smaller. Wonder if Travis now feels a little bit more comfortable about his fuel.
Yeah,
Either
like
that, or he might have just said that he's just gonna go for it anyway. It's possible that he just realizes that if he lets off like he wants to, he's not gonna be able to make it to the end on pace ahead of Reynolds, so he might just have to be going now.
I think at this point it really does come down to that, and Callisto actually just made a little mistake in the one. It hasn't allowed Torres past, but Torres is definitely closer now.
You see him up the Rita Aposta. Down to half a second
Oh!
behind. Oh, and Little Train into the wall. You talked about those rear tires not looking healthy, Adam, and I think it wasn't necessarily the tires. I think he did catch a little bit of the AstroTurf on the outside. Whatever the case, the result was a visit to the tire barrier.
Now, something you don't realize when you drive sports cars around here is that the difference between the curb and the AstroTurf actually has an opposite bank there, and so you kind of fall off of the curb onto the AstroTurf. We see a lot of the F1 guys in real life put almost all 4 tires on that AstroTurf to just try and settle the car a little bit better, but since that provides an off-track in iRacing, generally most drivers try to avoid that, but Lionel just getting caught out by it today.
So Mark Torres now up to 4th position with that, which is, interestingly enough, that's where he started. Little Train started in 12th, so he's still having not the worst of days. Looking at the top 5 here. As we take a look at the battle behind them, Kevin Hill, who is trying to take this away from Scott Corbin, and I think he's got it. Corbin with a little twitch off the corner, can't respond.
And that's Lionel Callisto you're seeing coming back into screen as Blake Reynolds puts in another fastest lap up there at the front of the field. Lionel looking to the inside, deciding better of it, but here's Blake. He's just cranking out the laps right now, but I think Travis might be doing enough to stay ahead now.
1:12.2 that time by, compared to a 1:12.5. 3/10 faster once again over Warling. But he's only got 4 laps to go, and he has just about 3 seconds to make up. This just isn't going to be enough.
It's going to be close, though. I mean, I definitely think he's going to be there. He might have one shot at it.
He's going to have to be ultra aggressive to try and make it stick. Number 90, who was quickest in qualifying, trying to prove he is quickest over the full 71 laps today. And so far, it's been an incredible job by the unorthodox driver. Going to be 3 to go as he crosses the line. Reynolds, quicker yet again, down to 2.4 seconds, but he has to deal with lap traffic. That was Bob Beltrami that he went by.
Speaking of lap traffic, Joe, Travis is going to run into lap traffic probably next lap with Brian Barnes and Marcus Tracy. And that's going to be in the middle sector. So he's got to be thinking about how he's going to cut through these guys.
He is hustling. It's down to 2.3 seconds between himself and Reynolds. 2.1 now. Is Warling's pace going down? That's a much bigger gap that he's closed in a much shorter amount of time. Warling could actually be saving fuel. I wonder if we could ride on board and see if we can get a sense if he is lifting into some of the braking zones.
Does look like he's maybe not picking up as much pace as Reynolds is with the fuel burning off. And it's absolutely going to come down to how quickly Warling can clear these lap cars.
That one's going to be easy because Tracy pulls out of the way. Couldn't quite tell if he was lifting down into the Senna S. It's 1.9 seconds between himself and Reynolds. Reynolds with a 12.5 last time by. Warling definitely a little bit slower, a 13 flat.
Blake is just putting everything he's got into this drive right now. He is on the edge. He has almost lost it quite a few times, but he's managing to do that thing, that magical thing that you see F1 drivers do all the time, which is be just a little bit out of control through the center of the corner, but that gives you the best speed off the exit. And I don't understand how they do this, but Blake is just on a tear right now.
2 laps to go. Going to be white flag next time by, and now Blake can start to see his rival up ahead. 1.5 seconds. Warling up the hill one more time. Is it the fuel? Is it the setup of the car? What is slowing him down? The 90 doesn't have much more time to go, but he has to get this 1 lap down without mistakes and with pace as Blake Reynolds crosses at 1.5 seconds behind him, down through the Senna S the final time. Car off course, that was Wayne Hutchison. We'll get to that later. Blake Reynolds, another 10th off through that first set of corners. Warling now braking for turn 4. Has he saved enough fuel? Can he pick up the pace now? It's looking good compared to before. He's holding it steady at that 1.5, 1.4 mark. Out and through Ferradura into the infield. This is where Reynolds tends to be stronger. 1.3 seconds. He gains another 10th. This could be too little too late, though. He's got to be so much closer. He'll need a big draft and an almighty run down the front stretch if he wants to try and pass him. 1.2 seconds between them. The former champion, the outgoing champion, wants to go out with a bang. Can he do it, though? It's off the final corner. Travis Warling 1.1 seconds ahead and climbing the hill. It's down to 0.9 of a second. Does he have enough to make it to the end? He's looking good, and Travis Warling is going to take the victory here today from pole. Reynolds just behind in second. Driscoll, a distant third. He must have had a spin since we last looked because he's way far behind than just a couple laps ago. The one-stop strategy was a valiant effort. Unfortunately, it didn't get him a win, but it did get him a podium here today.
And he might have done the work that he needed to do to ensure Travis Warling's victory. He might have held up Blake Reynolds just enough to make sure his teammate could come across the line in first.
That's a good point. He certainly was fighting hard, and that gave the buffer that Warling seemed to need with how close it wound up at the end. Callisto with a 5th place finish. It's a little bit of a tight fight between Corbin and Hill. Oh, excuse me, no, they're on different laps here. Oh, no, actually that was for position. Looks like Corbin is going to come out on top between them. Richie Hearn, one of our other one-stoppers, wound up in 12th, just ahead of them. There you see Ryan Toma crossing the line. Last car on the lead lap, but unfortunately not ahead of Miller. Still gained a lot of spots, and 8th after starting in 24th. That's going to be the last of our cars that have crossed the line. A big congratulations to Travis Warling for another victory. We'll take a quick break, and after that, we'll show you the unofficial results as well as driver interviews. Stick around because we'll have all the upcoming races here on the GSRC. Welcome back to Interlagos. We just watched the final round in the 2019 major season. The Brazilian Grand Prix was, in the end, won by Travis Warling. He started it on pole, but he gave us a thriller at the end. Unsure if he could get to the line with enough fuel or whatever was slowing him down. It was only a second between himself and Blake Reynolds in the end. Steve Driscoll, his teammate, wound up in third after gridding next to him, right next to him on the field. And then Mark Torres took fourth behind them. Lionel Callisto, a bit of problems towards the end of the race, but he does get a fifth spot after starting 12th, so it's a big climb for him. Trevor Clement winds up in sixth with Reed Miller taking P7. Ryan Toma, 24th to 8th. I think that is actually the mover of the race. right there. Matthew Thunhorst finishes ninth, the first car a lap down, followed by John Pat Kelly rounding out your top 10. Adam?
Ross Banfield is going to come home in 11th place alongside of Richie Hearns. Scott Corbin, after having a couple of spins and a couple issues, comes home in 13th, with Kevin Hill finishing behind him. Wade Hayes, a good showing from him, coming home in the 15th position, with Brian Barnes in 16th, with Bob Beltrami coming home in the 17th position. A good gain from him from his starting position. And then Nick Kuhn coming home in 18th position, our sportsman driver who made it into this Pro Series. It's a good finish for him and good haul of points too. Jeff Schmeier is going to come home in 19th position, with Ray Partridge rounding out your top 20. Christian?
Then in 21st, we had Brian Bennett, our winner from Bathurst. Just couldn't really get it hooked up today, and probably a little bit of a disappointing race for him tonight. Rob Gall was 22nd, Marcus Tracy 23rd. Wayne Hutchinson came home 24th. We saw him have that incident right at the end there. And then we move into the guys who really kind of had a bad night, with Brian McGreevy finishing 26 laps down in 25th, William Fletcher 41 laps down in 26th, and Paul Darling 52 laps down in 27th.
We've got our winner ready to talk to us, Travis Warling, going to join us here in the booth. Travis, you started it on pole, you finished in the top spot, but that doesn't tell the whole story. Tell us about the end of the race, because we're curious to know, were you close on fuel or what was hurting your pace?
Honestly, I have no idea. I lost a little bit of front grip as the track rubbered up, but Blake just turned on. I had nothing for him. Those were all qualifying laps. I was pushing as hard as I could. I have no idea where Blake found his speed, but it was amazing.
Well, it gave us some real excitement. The other question is, we were watching the different strategies between you and your teammate Steve down there. And I don't know if you've had a chance to talk to Steve, but you might have to thank him for that win, because he came out just ahead because of his alternate strategy and held up Blake. Was that planned at the start, that you two would kind of split the strategies, or was that not something that you had talked about?
Yeah, I'll definitely have to thank him. We had discussed it earlier in the week, and up until about today, he was thinking about doing a one-stop, and then during the warm-up, he switched to his two-stop, and then about a minute before the race, he switched back to a one-stop. So I didn't really know what was happening, but I'm glad it worked out, obviously. I'll definitely have to thank him for playing a little bit of a roadblock there.
Wow, crazy how everything worked out in the end. Well, you ended the season on a high. You took your second victory here in the Americas region. What does that leave you for next year? Do you have goals on getting more wins than that, or is it at the top step? Do you want to get the crown next year?
Yeah, honestly, I really want to go for the championship next year. I was really close this year, and then Thunhorse was able just to be a lot more consistent than I was. Unorthodox was able to find a lot of bit of pace these past few races, and I think we can have a very serious shot at contending for the championship next year in both the constructors and in the individual. So I'm definitely going to aim for that.
Well, we even pointed out that Unorthodox was looking incredibly good today, and there's someone to watch out for. Congratulations finishing on a win, and we can't wait to see it come January.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for everything.
That was Travis Warling, P1 today. Up next, second place finisher, a mere second behind Blake Reynolds, and Adam is going to be talking to him about that thrilling finish.
Definitely. Blake, before we get to your pace at the finish, tell us about that 5-lap battle with Steve Driscoll when you came out of the pits there. How tough was it to get by?
Well, I didn't even think about it. I was just trying really hard to get to Travis, and then I realized I was out of gas. So I came into the pits, and what do you know? I came up behind Steve, and then I knew Steve was on the one stop, and I figured his tires were a little used up. So I tried to use the freshness of my tires to get by him. But yeah, it took a while. Steve's a really great racer, and I've never had problems with him. He's one of the people who's willing to go side by side for an entire lap. So I really like that about racing with Steve. But yeah, that was a ton of fun.
Yeah, that was a fantastic battle you had with him. But when you cleared him, you set sail. Where did that pace come from? Did you know you had it in you to set those low 112s?
No, I think that came from the rubbered-in track, really. The entire race I drove the same. I had I had the same amount of gas that I had the previous stint. I did 110 pound in the last 2 stints, and yeah, I don't know. It just came out of nowhere. I'd say I had a little more downforce. I didn't have anywhere near the straightaway speed of the unorthodox cars. Maybe just because I had a little more downforce, and maybe just something clicked with the rubber there at the end.
Well, you had a fantastic finish, and as the outgoing champion, it must have been awesome to be racing up there for the win. How many more laps do you think you would have needed to catch up to Travis?
Uh, I'd say at least 3, and who knows how long it would have taken to get by him. He's just as good as Steve. So who knows?
Well, fantastic race today, Blake, and we look forward to seeing you next season as you continue racing. Are you planning on racing next season?
I was thinking of doing not full time, riding shotgun. This is our last full time race and season as a team. We'll be doing like one offs, mostly oval stuff, but yeah, I'll definitely be looking at the ovals, and I didn't get to look at the schedule before the race, but I'll have to take a look at it.
Well, we'll miss you in the major series, but we'll look forward to seeing you in other series as we go along in iRacing. But thanks for talking to us, Blake.
Yep, thanks, Adam. Thanks, guys.
All right, that was Blake Reynolds, our second place finisher. And we have our third place finisher, Steve Driscoll, with Christian Chandler.
Steve, it looked like you had a pretty good run tonight. One of the only guys out there to do a one-stopper. And your teammate was actually just mentioning to us that you were flipping back and forth between the one and the two-stopper. And any regrets on going for the one-stopper there?
Not really. I mean, the tires, I kept on having some oversteer when I went with the one stint, but I just thought it was the only way to beat Travis. He got really quick at the end of practice during the week, and I figured, why not? Let's do something unorthodox and try to make a miracle happen, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a good try, and we saw you had a great battle with Blake there, and just a little mistake with the spin, but you got to be pretty happy with third, right? You had really good pace, and the start of the race, I was pretty sure that, say, Travis was kind of gone, but once we realized you were on a one-stopper, you really played yourself into the race.
Yeah, I just had to be patient at the beginning. I was trying to battle Blake as clean, but as as well as possible, and I had an absolute blast battling Blake there. But I thought with the one stop, I was going to let the field kind of come to me, and then just try to when it was go.
You just got cut off a little bit there, but kind of leads into my next question. You're saying about how you let the field sort of come back towards you. That was kind of my plan in the European race, and I didn't really find that maybe happened as much. Blake was mentioning to us that it felt like the track was getting faster and faster towards the end of the race with the rubber. Did you find the same?
Yeah, the track definitely got a little bit faster. I was probably about 3-4 tenths a lap faster with the tires I had.
Okay, that's interesting to hear because I don't feel like the European race maybe went kind of the same way. But this race aside, you happy with how the championship went for you this year? You kind of making a play for the overall title next season?
Yeah, I'm okay. I had a really rough beginning to the season there where I kept on making mental mistakes, but then I think I had a pretty strong second half there, and I'm really looking forward to battle Matt and Travis and a few others, including Blake there for the overall next year.
All right, well that's great to hear, man. Before we let you go, is there anybody that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Not really. I just want to, I want to appreciate all the admins and everybody who runs this league. It's been absolutely a blast, and after the rough week I had, I'm glad I got to drive with two hands, and it was a blast this week.
Well, congrats again on your third place, and good luck for next season.
Thanks, Christian. You as well.
Thank you.
That was our third place finisher, Steve Driscoll. We got one more interview, technically two more interviews here, just to close out the season. We talked about the impressive run that the Alliance team has had with 4 straight championships. We've got Brian Bennett and Matthew Thunhorst, our new champion, ready to take that number 1. Let's start with Matthew, since you've now closed out the season and get ready to start next year as the new victor. Matt, it looked like you didn't quite have the pace today as you finished the first car a lap down. And there were times that we saw you kind of give up positions almost. Were you just trying to make it to the finish to have kind of a cruise to the checkers, or what was your MO today?
Yeah, I'm not going to be shy about saying that I absolutely hate the F1 cars and high downforce in general, especially on the road side. I can get away on oval side with the Indy cars, but today was about surviving. And if it wasn't for that one mistake I made where I accidentally grabbed first gear, downshifting into one, I would have had a pretty stout day. So the goal for today was just survive and, try to get a top 10, top 5 if I could. That'd be sweet. But yeah, I've always done horrible in F1s, and so that's why I didn't want the championship to come down to this race. So that's why the past 3 before this, I busted my butt to try to do as best I could.
I remember you mentioning that, and you did get that top 10. Brian, obviously not a very good day for you today as well, coming home in 21st. Not nearly as good as what you experienced over in Bathurst, but I guess it is some consolation knowing that your team takes another championship. But do you look at the likes of Unorthodox and how they perform today, and does that kind of turn your attention to paying attention to what they're doing?
Oh yeah, I've always recognized that they are super talented. They only, if they found themselves an oval guy, they'd really be in the mix. It seems like they've don't have it on the super speedways as well. But oh yeah, they've super talented on the road. Smart decisions. Travis always makes good decisions. Steve gets taken down by a connection every once in a while, but they're really, really good on the road side of things.
Certainly looks like it. Are you disappointed hearing that riding shotgun is one of your old time rivals? Really is going to be backing out? Were you guys aware that they were going to be doing that?
Yeah, I saw that. I can't remember where it was. If it was on a Facebook post that the people were tagged in or not. But yeah, it's disappointing. It's always nice to have the competitors that are here stay strong or grow. Like Elite West is they were a rival that had great skills, and hopefully they can make a comeback, even though they have real world drivers, so they get distracted like that, which is acceptable, right? And then, riding shotgun, taking a step back, that's disappointing, but hopefully somebody else steps right in their shoes.
Judging by the talent and the way it's been growing, I think they will certainly have people step in. One last one for both of you. We'll start with Matt to answer this question. I don't know if you've gotten to see the schedule for next season, but if you have, is there a race you're looking forward to coming up in 2020? Matt?
Aside from the dirt, pretty much I love ovals, and so I mean I'm kind of excited to see a little bit more IndyCar over there, and after kind of getting to experience them a little bit, I'm kind of a little shocked to say this, but I'm kind of looking forward to the Lotus 49 race because I'm not a big road guy, but get me a V8 supercar, get me some low downforce beast, and be able to slip and slide. So any road races like that, and pretty much almost all the ovals, I'm there.
Does my heart well to hear someone else be excited for that. Brian, what about you?
Well, I asked for a screenshot of that in the writers meeting, so I see that they've got one. Is the race of the Netherlands, is that at which course is?
Zandvoort is where they'll be at with the Audi TCR.
Well, I love Zandvoort, so I'll have to learn to love that TCR. Otherwise, Formula One. I always love Spa. That looks like a good schedule. I don't know where the Silver Crown's raced at and such, or the 68 USGP. What course is that, and which?
That would be Watkins
Lotus
Glen.
79.
Yeah,
well,
Watkins
Lotus
Glen
49
actually.
Oh, well, that means who knows? And I think right now I'd say Netherlands. I see there's no Sebring on board, so that's very disappointing.
Yeah, that is a bit of a classic. Sad to see it not there, but we're all pretty hyped as well about what we see out there. Thank you again to both of you for coming and talk to us. Congratulations on another Alliance victory and a Drivers' Championship for the team.
Thank you. Thanks for all the coverage you guys have done, and thanks to Mike for putting it all together. He gets to have a month or so off here, I suppose.
Yeah, he finally gets to relax. That was Brian Bennett and Matthew Thunhorst here. Bennett finishing in 21st, Thunhorst in 9th today. That's going to close us out for the season. But again, no reason to be sad. We're going to be back pretty quickly. January starts things off once again, very early on. And we'll go over that in a minute. Before we give a huge thank you to Mike Willett and his incredible team behind him that helped make this 2019 season happen. And also a thank you to iRacing for putting us on IES. And make sure and subscribe. All you got to do is click the big red button. You won't miss a moment here on the iRacing Esports Network. Thank you to the companies that provide the software and the hardware for our broadcast. You can see them listed here on your screen. And additional thanks go to June Lalonde, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. Thanks to the team today, Adam, Amjed, Christian, and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. You can also check us out on social media. Our Twitter is at GSR Channel, Facebook, Global Sim Racing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. If you'd like to support GSRC, we've got all kinds of cool merchandise at our store online. That is gsrc.storenvy.com. The link is in the description below. The next race is going to be at Daytona when we come back in January. That'll be for the 2.4-hour race with the IMSA cars. That'll be Sunday, January 12th at 7:45 p.m. Eastern. We also have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. But until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.